yeah. Some rapid climatic changes occur at the start, through the period, and at the end of the period.
I think we see two very sudden temperature increases of about 10 degrees centigrade. Yeah, they found ancient coral from, it's basically fossilized coral in the Gulf of Mexico region, and they can see like a step effect. So if sea levels had risen steadily, you'd see the coral just growing up the
you see it layered.
But they don't. They see step. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, like the video, and it really does help. So
I suppose the Earth crust displacement theory is a possible alternative explanation for the fields of suddenly frozen megafauna that we find both. Well, I think it's mostly in Siberia, isn't it, that they find a lot of these suddenly frozen.
I mean, they found one recently, didn't they? They sort of melted it, didn't they? And sort of there's a big thing how they sort of defrosted it and found it. Like
was it a baby? I think it was a baby one, wasn't it?
Yeah,
was it quite small?
The one I saw was an adult, but it's still mental that it was still basically stood up, but it was frozen solid. There
was one that I was reading about that when it. When the ground shifted and it came out of the permafrost, this mammoth, it was supposedly from about the last ice age, for about 12,000 years ago or so. The meat was that fresh on it that the wolves came in and started eating the meat off of the.
Bloody hell!
And that's 10,000-year-old meat that they're eating. Yeah. That was, but apparently the meat looked that good. It was that marbleized. It was like it was frozen yesterday. Yeah. So they really were frozen,
full bellies and all sorts. Certainly, they still be. That's that movie Day After Tomorrow, isn't it? They talked about storms that would then suck in air in from the troposphere and causing sudden freezing.
The centre of the storm being ridiculously cold and causing
minus 70, 80 degrees centigrade sort of thing, and just causing sudden fast freezing.
It's quite an interesting film. I did quite like the premise.
I love that movie. It's a great movie. Yeah. And then and all the wolves escape the zoo and start eating everyone. It's a great film. I like anything with Dennis Quaid in, to be fair. He's just one of those actors. I was like, he's always doing some good films.
So as I was saying, so I like the Earth crust displacement theory as an alternative to the asteroid impact into the North American ice sheet.
Yeah, in some ways it explains other aspects of the thing. You're thinking if there was a sudden shift, and suddenly North America that was more over the North Pole shifted, and then it pushed Siberia more over the North Pole, that would cause that sudden freezing of the. You have to wonder what that would do to the weather patterns and things, isn't it? What could that trigger? What sort of?
Well, it's.
I don't think we have any idea how or what that would be like on the planet. I think you'd see volcanoes go off. You'd see.
It's difficult to speculate because I mean we don't.
The shock to the planet would be dramatic, to say the least. I think this theory's pretty much been dismissed or
disproven.
But then there's things like the Piri Reis maps, which are. If you don't know, but it's basically a map that shows, or it's believed to show, Antarctica, but without any ice on it.
Yes. Although Antarctica has had ice on it for thousands of years. But this map, the Piri Reis map, dates back to the 16th century or 1600s.
It's the 1600s, but then it's supposed to have been copied from another map.
Yes,
no longer exists. So. I mean, this is used as evidence, but I mean, some argue that actually it's not a map of Antarctica anyway. It's a map of South America. It's just not very good. So, it shows it sort of coming down and then coming round, and they're saying that they just weren't as good at doing maps back then. Others argue that this is evidence that mankind was seafaring far earlier than we ever thought possible. Because, I mean, at the time of this map was done, we still hadn't discovered Antarctica, even at that period.
Yep.
So, and we hadn't sailed in this area. But we know that history resets all the time. We generally believe we were the first to find America. I never understood it. Christopher Columbus discovered America. It was full of people. Where was he discovering it from? It's like,
precisely.
I name this land America, and all the Native Americans going, hello, excuse me, what are you doing? And then the Vikings are there going, we found that ages ago. We on about. It's like,
history's written by the winners, isn't it? And I take history with a bit of a pinch of salt sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because we're very what's the word? We're very arrogant in making these claims of discovery.
But if crustal slip theory is true, though, when this would have slipped, Antarctica would have been much closer to the equator potentially,
with a much more temperate climate.
Could it have been a populated continent? Potentially.
Quite possibly, yeah.
And Antarctica sounds like Atlantis. The words are very similar. There's like 3 or 4 of the letters are like the same.
Not as similar as the Atlantic Ocean. I suspect it's still an island chain that's sunk in the Atlantic. That would be my main guess, just based on the naming of the ocean.
Because of the letters used.
Yeah, it seems most likely to me. Yeah. Occam's razor. That would be where I put my money. Although Bright Insight does do a good video to suggest that the Eye of the Sahara may well have been the city of Atlantis.
Next couple of episodes,
this is another episode.
Next couple of episodes, we're getting into Atlantis. But it is important to say that Plato argues that Atlantis was destroyed in the period of the Younger Dryas.
Yes.
So 11,600 years ago is the date. Roughly that
Plato gives
for Atlantis being destroyed.
Corresponds with the second warming event of the Younger Dryas and meltwater pulse 1b.
Yeah. So we're basically saying the sea levels rose, and then there's a myth about that Plato wrote a story about an ancient civilization being drowned. Coincidence
that there was massive sea level rise at that exact time that he said that the city sunk into the ocean.
In a period where we would have lived near the coast, or on islands or whatever.
And the fact that Plato also claimed to be a historian and wrote historical records called the Critias and the...
I think he would have then used it for political reason, like we do. Well, the Bible is basically a big story telling a story of Christianity, but also then telling us how we're supposed to live and morals and things like this. We tend to use stories to try to teach, don't we? We do. Yeah. Plato was potentially doing that. He was taking an historical event, but then he was trying to teach the current Greek thing that
he's trying to make a good story out of it so that it'd be passed on and taught to the next generation.
But there's a moral lesson in there, isn't there? That if the Atlanteans were supposed to have annoyed the gods, weren't they, with their decadent lifestyle, and that's why the gods destroyed Atlantis. We can assume that was probably Plato adding that on to try to teach a moral lesson to the current Greek people that if we have a decadent lifestyle, the gods are going to smite us, sort of thing. But that doesn't mean the Atlantis story is false.
No.
The Troy story, that was a similar thing, that where they tried to then add a moral thing on. The story sort of got expanded on, and they tried to get lessons in it, and then everyone thought it was a myth. And then we found it.
Troy.
So,
I just wouldn't discount all of these ancient historical records, such as Plato, as just myth. Maybe they were trying to teach us things. Maybe they were accurate historical records, or as accurate as he could be, talking about something that happened 9,000 years before his predecessor Solon.
For me, it's quite simple. I mean, we're going to go into the next episode, and we're going to really go on about where we think Atlantis might have been. But I think in this now, if we talk about 2 questions really: could there have been an ancient civilization in that period? And if there was, would we have evidence of it today? And I think until Göbekli Tepe, and other things, we've found now that we were building cities at this time. Göbekli Tepe is an incredibly complicated site that we're going to be doing once we've sorted Atlantis out. We hit Göbekli Tepe. We know that places like Jordan and places like this, and Jericho, were populated possibly at this time. They were building cities. There is evidence to say we were, as humans, building cities in this time period.
Yes.
So, could we have built Atlantis? Yeah. Could it have been on an island that was then sunk? Yeah.
Yep.
Would we then have evidence of it? Potentially not.
Well, we now know that islands or landmass can sink back into the sea. We know that.
Yeah.
Know that that's actually a possibility.
Crust can be quite dynamic, yeah.
Yeah, so some we see mountain ranges rising at points where continents are drifting into each other. We see the ocean floor pulling apart where they're drifting apart from each other, and new volcanic material coming up and forming ridges really in oceans. And
I saw a documentary years ago. It was a guy. It was in Yellowstone Park, and he said he was the ranger sort of thing there. So one of the days he was going on his normal route, which he did like once a week or so, and he drove up over this ridge, and expecting to see this large lake, and it was gone. And it had gone over, like, it had only been like about a few days since he'd been there previously. It had gone. The earth had rised up in that area by about 30 metres. And obviously then the water just sank away, sort of thing, just disappeared, sort of thing. Nobody had known this had happened. The only reason they know it happened was because this ranger was on his route and found it. I mean, obviously that's a dynamic area of a lot of volcanic activity.
yes.
But this happened rapidly, and nobody knew anything about it.
Perhaps terra firma isn't as firm as we think it is.
Well, we know, yeah, well, exactly. So to go on about, to go back to it like Atlantis or something as well, I don't think anybody can genuinely argue. What's that term they keep using for this? Pseudoscience.
Yes.
I think anybody that sometimes 2 and 2 makes 4. Right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think you can necessarily argue Atlantis exists, and then these people that found it, they said they found evidence of it. Nothing's been conclusive yet.
Yep.
But I can see a couple of problems anyway. I can see problems finding this. Oceans tend to be quite muddy places, and you get a lot of sediment.
Yes. Yes.
So if there was an ancient city, for one, if there was a sudden flood, that would cause massive devastation. It could literally wash away quite a lot of the evidence. But for two, if this then sank under 100 metres of ocean, which we know the oceans rose by about 100 metres over this period to today's levels, it's going to be under 100 metres of water, which is well within our means of exploring.
Exploring now, yeah, totally. So I think that's where we're going to start gathering more evidence for these past civilizations, perhaps even pre 12,800 years ago.
Yeah,
we need to start looking within this 100 metres under the sea, and that there have been.
But it's also going to be under potentially how many metres of sediment. That's the problem.
Well, that is the problem as well. So you've got to look for perhaps areas. I would look at like we said, look at the world map as it was at 12,800 years ago, before the before the several hundred feet of sea level rise that occurred, and look at where the coastline was then, and look at all the land that is now underwater that wasn't 12,800 years ago, and then look for areas where sedimentation is known not to occur as well as perhaps some other areas, and focus on those areas to try and find.
And we're going to have to use some
structures,
sort of ground penetrating radar or something as well, couldn't we? That could potentially find us if we look in the right place.
They have already done this across the Mediterranean, haven't they?
But they found found a lot of underwater things. There's one
coast of Japan as well. There's one massive monolithic site off the coast of Japan.
We're gonna talk about all these sites in our next episode, and we're going to try to see if we can figure out it. I don't think we can argue there wasn't an Atlantis. I don't know if the people of Atlantis called it Atlantis, or if that's just a name we've picked up. But I don't think you can argue there wouldn't have been an ancient city that was lost. We're going to talk about the sites that we think that, like, there's the Eye of the Sahara. There's a large island off the country of Ireland. It's very annoying that Ireland is called Ireland when you then talk about islands near Ireland. It's very difficult to get your tongue around. They really need to change the name, just to help us. That would be great. But there's a large island off the west coast of Ireland that sort of fits some of Plato stuff. There's the Eye of the Sahara. There's places in the Mediterranean that's potential, like I said, that are lost cities.
See, also there, we could also be also still looking in the wrong place for Atlantis, because we do know that there are certain places where there'll be like a plateau that's slowly rising, and over thousands of years it's risen miles.
Yeah.
Well, if that can happen, maybe land can subduct as well.
Yeah.
So you could even have something that's now a mile down in the ocean, on the ocean floor, that was where Atlantis was.
Well, we know Antarctica's rising, don't we? Because the ice is melting, so there's less weight. So the ice actually pushes the ground down. As it melts, it's rising up. There's also volcanic stuff going on as well, but it's rising up. Last ice age, lots of ice melted. It might have changed the dynamics of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, exactly. And hence Atlantis was lost to the sea overnight. That's how Plato describes it. It was lost under the waves. The whole city, the island city, was lost under the waves. And
there's also, there could have been some sort of volcanic event as well, which also could potentially can do this sort of thing. Volcanoes can create land and they can destroy very dramatically. And again, there would be, if that's happened though, there will be no evidence potentially. It could be under lava, which is, I mean, if that's the case, then it'll be pretty much gone. The only reason we found Pompeii is because it's on land.
Mother Earth eventually reclaims everything.
Yeah, we come from the Earth and we go back. So yeah, that's the next couple of episodes. We're going to be talking about Atlantis. We're going to be talking about human migration, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Because there's some that argue that maybe humanity had actually pretty much migrated across the Earth pretty much before the Younger Dryas event, and the Younger Dryas event was like a reset.
Yeah, I think I do agree with Graham Hancock. I do think it was probably a reset point, and that we probably did have some kind of civilization prior to this. Perhaps just not with the same focus that we have now. Perhaps personal transportation wasn't a thing for them back then, and they didn't need that. Decided not to go down that route, or they decided not to go down the route of manufacturing plastics. They decided that they didn't need plastics, or we're looking for things that we've developed now in this modern world, but an advanced civilization may have been just as advanced, but not gone down the same exact path that we've gone down.
Could have been like the Native Americans were very much, their theory and their way of living was to be in balance with nature and life, and they believed these things. So if you had a large, I don't think we're talking about a technologically based, up to our level now maybe, but if you had a pretty advanced civilization that believed in that, and believed in trying to be in balance with things, there might not be that much evidence.
No, there might not be as much as we would. There would be a lot more left from our civilization probably now than what we find from past civilizations.
Because we build with steel and glass and things like this.
Well, this is what how long do you think it takes for the Earth to reclaim a car?
I have no idea, but
not long, several hundred years gone.
Yeah, because it just rusts away. Yeah, we have galvanised steels and things like that, don't we?
Well, we do, and there are certain things that would survive that we've created today.
But that's another thing we're going to
10,000 years, but still not a lot. There's not
something else we're going to be able to discuss, isn't it? Is that there might have been evidence left behind by an ancient empire potentially. We have to ask how old the pyramids are, how old other sites are around the world. There seems to be areas like Stonehenge, Adam's Calendar that we've already discussed, places like this that seem to be
Good and Padang,
that are built in very similar ways, could be far older than we have any idea. We don't know why they were built. Could they have been meeting points for an ancient empire? Could they have been an area like, that when the sun is in this place at Stonehenge,
we'll meet here.
The Atlanteans came. And that's when we met and we did the thing.
Quite possible.
When we talk about Stonehenge, we're going to talk about that they found bones from lambs from Scotland there. So it was a meeting point. It seemed to be a meeting point, an annual or a regular place that people from all over Britain used to go to.
Used to go
and you
and
have to
meet.
ask why.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have boardrooms back then, so they had to meet somewhere.
Yeah. No telephone conferencing. They had to do that. So that I think, that's where we're going with the next couple of episodes, isn't it? And this Younger Dryas event, however much mainstream science argues about what caused it, we can see that there was a massive event, and the argument for could have that have been a reset for the human population. We have to argue yes. That's our Younger Dryas event. Next is Atlantis, which we really get into it, and then we're going into Göbekli Tepe and the pyramids and all that, which I love that stuff. I love the pyramids particularly.
Yeah. So, I think there would be some very interesting episodes to come.
Pyramids are a power station. Get into that. We really need to. That's one of those sort of theories that you told me once, and I went, yes, Damien, the pyramid was a power station. Okay, have another drink, mate, and calm down. And then I started watching some documentary, and I was like, shh, pyramids might have been a power station. Because I was
thought, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not thinking of it like a power station, maybe like today, but just to light up a light bulb would have been like magic to them people. So yeah, that's where we're going. Thanks very much, and see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time.